It happened on a Thursday night, the kind of night when the air felt heavy and the neon lights outside the diner flickered like they were tired of trying to stay alive. I was 7 months pregnant, balancing plates on my aching wrists, trying to ignore the way my lower back pulsed with every step. The dinner rush had slowed to a crawl, leaving behind the smell of burnt coffee and the sticky sound of sneakers peeling off linoleum. I had cleaned the same table 3 times just to stay awake. Then a customer in a wrinkled jacket knocked his glass over with the back of his hand, spilling water everywhere. Before I could even react, he waved me off as if I were an inconvenience he did not want to deal with. It splashed onto my shoes and soaked the hem of my jeans. I grabbed a towel, trying to keep my breathing steady. My shift manager, Rick, stomped out from the kitchen like I had committed a federal crime. His eyes dropped to the puddle and then to my belly, and he let out a dramatic sigh. "If you cannot handle this, quit already. You slow everyone down." I froze. My hand tightened around the towel. The customer who caused the mess just shrugged, gave me a crooked grin, and took a sip of his beer. My heartbeat thudded painfully. I did not say anything. I had learned not to. Before I could kneel down, the man in the wrinkled jacket reached out and grabbed my forearm as he tried to steady himself. It was clumsy, drunk, careless, but strong enough that I lost my balance for a second. I pulled my arm back, breathing hard, staring at the spot where his fingers had been. Rick did not ask if I was all right. He did not tell the man to back off. He just snapped again. "Clean it! Now!" My throat burned. I blinked fast, swallowing the frustration. Then I saw her, my little girl Lily, her tiny face peeking from the doorway that led to the kitchen. She was not supposed to be there. She was supposed to be coloring in the break room, but she must have wandered out when she heard Rick yelling. Her eyes were wide, confused, scared in a way I had never seen before. "Mommy," she whispered, barely a sound. I felt something inside me crack. I straightened, wiped my hands, and walked to Rick. "I need to leave." He scoffed. "If you walk out, do not come back tomorrow." "That is fine," I said, surprising even myself. I picked up my bag and held out my hand to Lily. She ran toward me instantly, wrapping her arms around my leg. Outside, rain hammered the pavement loudly enough to drown out every other sound. We stepped under the awning as lightning flashed behind us. My breath showed in the cold air. Lily clung tighter, shivering. "Mommy," she said, her voice trembling. "Is he mad at you because of me?" The question sliced right through me. I knelt slowly, the weight of my belly pressing against my thighs, and cupped her cheeks. "No, baby. Nothing was your fault. Ever." She nodded, but her eyes stayed sad. I lifted her into my arms and carried her through the rain until we reached our apartment building. By the time we got inside, my jeans were soaked to the knee and Lily's curls were dripping. I changed her into warm pajamas and heated a cup of milk for her. Just as she curled up with her blanket, a knock sounded on our door. Mrs. Harlow stood there, our elderly neighbor, who smelled faintly of lavender and old books. Her gray hair was in its usual bun, and she wore her quilted robe over her floral nightgown. "I hope I am not disturbing you, sweetheart," she said gently. "I heard some commotion earlier. Are you all right?" I nodded, because if I opened my mouth, I might cry. She gave me a knowing, sympathetic look before holding out a cream envelope. "Someone canceled last minute. It is a dinner reservation for 2 tomorrow night at a lovely little place downtown. I thought you might want it." "A blind date," she added softly. My instinct was to decline immediately. "That is kind, but I cannot. Really, I have too much going on, and I am not exactly a blind date person, and I do not even remember how to dress up anymore, and I look like a tired watermelon, and I am." "Mom, let's go!" Lily's voice chimed from behind me. I turned. My daughter stood there in her threadbare unicorn pajamas, her tiny hands holding the envelope like it contained magic. "Maybe they have cake," she said, eyes wide with hope. Something warm moved in my chest. She had not looked that excited about anything in months. I looked at her mismatched socks, at the soft fuzz of her curly hair, at the gentle glow in her eyes. And in that moment, something settled quietly inside me. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was the universe choosing for me. "All right, sweetheart," I whispered. "We will go." I had no idea one tiny, Let's go would change my entire life. The next evening arrived far quicker than I was emotionally prepared for, and I found myself standing outside a restaurant whose glowing gold letters on the window made my stomach twist. Lily held my hand tightly, her eyes darting everywhere with the kind of wonder that only a 3-year-old could maintain in a place this fancy. I smoothed down the only dress I owned that still fit over my pregnant belly, a simple navy one that had lost a button last year. The hostess gave me the kind of polite smile people use when they are not quite sure you belong. And just as I was about to pull Lily close and tell her we were leaving, she spotted something inside and gasped. Before I could ask what she had seen, she broke free from my hand and bolted toward the center of the dining room. My heart nearly stopped. "Lily, wait." I followed quickly, apologizing to startled guests as I moved between tables. She darted straight toward a little boy, maybe 4, sitting quietly with a toy train in his lap. And beside him sat a man who looked like he had stepped out of a world I had never lived in. His suit was charcoal gray, his posture relaxed yet precise, and when he lifted his head, I felt an unexpected jolt. His eyes were warm, steady, a little tired, but sharp enough to notice everything at once. Lily had already climbed into the empty chair next to the boy who stared at her with wide curiosity. My face flushed hot with embarrassment as I reached the table. "I am so sorry," I told the man, my voice breathless. "She just ran off and I could not." "It is all right," he said, standing up with a calmness that made me feel even more self-conscious. His voice was deep but gentle, and his smile was small, not forced. "You must be Olivia." I blinked. "You are—" "Ethan Ward," he finished. "My Aunt Harlow talks about you often." My heartbeat thumped loudly in my ears. "Mrs. Harlow set me up. Of course she did." The boy next to Lily spoke in a soft voice. "I am Caleb, and this is my train." Lily nodded solemnly as if they were entering negotiations. "I like your train. I like your shoes," he replied. Lily kicked her feet proudly under the table, and I watched them begin to talk as if they had been friends for years. I turned back to Ethan, mortified. "I am so sorry. We can leave." I really did not mean to intrude. He shook his head lightly. "You are not intruding. Children usually know what to do better than we do." He gestured toward the chairs. "Please join us." I hesitated until Lily looked up and said, "Mommy, sit. Please." And so I did. The moment I sat down, I became acutely aware of everything around me. The soft lighting, the clinking glasses, the prices on the menu that made my throat tighten, the elegant couples, the servers gliding like they were trained ballet dancers. I felt like an imposter in a room made for people who had never worked double shifts while pregnant. Ethan must have sensed the tension in my shoulders because he leaned in slightly and said in a low voice, "Order whatever you and Lily want. No pressure here." His tone was reassuring in a way I did not expect. Not patronizing, not performative, just sincere. Lily and Caleb were already busy coloring on the children's menu with the restaurant crayons. When the waiter arrived, Lily confidently ordered strawberry milk like it was the most natural request in the world, and Caleb whispered to her that chocolate milk was better, but he would try strawberry someday. While the kids talked about colors and dinosaurs and a mysterious shared love of pancakes, Ethan and I tried to make small talk. It was awkward at first, like two strangers tossed together with no warning. He asked about my work, and I told him I worked at the senior care center. "It is not glamorous, but I love the people there," I said quietly. "Some days I feel like I am the only family they have left." Ethan's brows softened. "That takes a lot of heart. I am sure they are lucky to have you." No one had said something like that to me in years. I swallowed hard and forced a smile. "What about you? Besides wearing better suits than everyone else I have ever met." He laughed, the sound surprisingly warm. "I run an architectural firm. We design community spaces. My wife used to say buildings are only valuable if people feel safe inside them." I looked up the mention of his wife hitting me gently but clearly. He did not avoid the subject, but he did not linger on it either. He said it like someone who had lived through pain and learned to carry it with grace. Caleb tugged on his sleeve, then showing him a drawing of 2 stick figures under a lopsided sun. "This is me and Lily," he announced proudly. "We are at the park." Lily leaned in. "That is not the park." That is a volcano. Caleb shrugged. Volcano Park. I could not help smiling. For the first time that night, I felt my shoulders loosen. As the main dishes arrived, I realized something strange. I did not feel judged. Not for the faint circles under my eyes. Not for my plain dress. Not for being a pregnant woman on a blind date she never asked for. Ethan spoke to me the way someone does when they genuinely want to learn who you are. Halfway through the meal, I caught him watching Lily laugh at something Caleb said. He looked at her first, at the kids first, before he looked at me. That small detail twisted something tender inside my chest. As dessert menus were handed out, the room suddenly felt too bright, too perfect, too unreal. I tensed again, remembering the diner, the spilled water, Rick's voice telling me I slowed everyone down. I leaned closer and whispered to Lily, "We should go, honey. It is late." But before I could finish, she tugged my sleeve gently and whispered the words that made my heart clench. "Mommy, I like them." Ethan heard. His eyes lifted to meet mine. Neither of us spoke, but something quiet and impossible passed between us in that moment. A question. A possibility. A beginning I was not ready to admit existed. The moment we stepped out of the restaurant, the cool night air rushed over my skin like a warning, and I felt the shift from warm candlelight to reality hit me sharper than I expected. Lily was bouncing beside me, her tiny fingers wrapped around my hand, as if the entire evening had been nothing more than a magical field trip. But all I could think about was how quickly I needed to get back home before the universe found a new way to humble me. Rain had begun to fall in thin silver sheets, dotting the sidewalk and collecting in small, shimmering puddles. I hurried Lily toward the car parked under a flickering street lamp, praying it would start on the first try. It did not. The engine sputtered, coughed, and exhaled its final breath like a dying lawnmower. I tried again, and again. Nothing. My heart sank as rain thickened, falling harder now, plastering my hair to my cheeks while Lily shivered in her little coat. It was late. We were alone in a dimly lit parking lot, and all at once, the world felt bigger and colder than it had any right to be. I closed my eyes for one long moment, breathing through the panic clawing at my throat. Then a low, familiar voice cut through the sound of rain. "Olivia." I jumped slightly, turning to see Ethan walking toward us with a large black umbrella, his suit jacket already damp around the shoulders. He had one hand holding the umbrella and the other in his pocket, balancing the weight with easy steadiness. "I saw you at the curb and figured something might be wrong." He angled the umbrella over Lily first, then me, as if it were instinct, not thought. "Your car giving you trouble." I let out a breath I had been holding too tightly. "It won't start. It just will not start." He crouched in the rain without hesitation, setting the umbrella handle against his chest so it covered us both while he bent down. His movements were confident and familiar, not the motions of a CEO protected by private drivers, but of someone who had spent years solving things with his own hands. "My dad was a mechanic," he said as he popped the hood. "He would haunt me if I could not jump a car in the rain." The sight almost made me laugh, something tight inside me loosening just a little. He checked cables, tugged a few connectors, tapped the battery casing like he was communicating with it. Then he stood up, water dripping from his hair, and motioned for me to try again. The car sputtered weakly. Once more. It sputtered again, then roared to life. Relief flooded every part of me at once, so sudden and overwhelming that I had to steady myself against the door for a second. "Thank you," I breathed. "I do not know what I would have done if you had not come out." Ethan closed the hood gently and stepped closer, rain rolling off his jacket sleeves. He looked at Lily, who was watching him with wide, trusting eyes, then at me. "Because she looked scared," he said softly. "And you looked alone." Something in my chest pulled tight, not painfully, but with the kind of ache that comes when someone sees through you a little too easily. Before I could respond, footsteps splashed behind him. Caleb ran toward us, clutching something small in his hand. "Daddy, wait," he said, breathlessly holding out his toy. He extended it toward Lily. "You can take this," he told her, "for emergencies." Lily blinked. The plastic dinosaur, a worn blue triceratops with one chipped horn, sat in his palm like something precious. "For me?" Lily whispered. Caleb nodded with the seriousness only a 4-year-old can achieve, just in case. She reached out and took it, hugging it instantly to her chest. My heart melted right there on the wet asphalt. "Thank you, Caleb," I said, brushing wet curls from Lily's face. "That is very thoughtful." He shrugged in a shy way and leaned into Ethan's leg. Ethan rested a gentle hand on his son's head. "You two get home safely," he said, stepping back. "If the car acts up again, call me." I started to protest, but he silenced me with a quiet look that held neither pity nor pressure, only sincerity. "Please, Olivia, let me know you two got home." I nodded, unable to trust my voice. I buckled Lily into her seat, tucking the small dinosaur beside her. She whispered to it like it were a secret friend. "You are coming home with us." The rain softened as I pulled out of the parking lot. In the rearview mirror, I saw Ethan standing under the umbrella, Caleb clinging to his side, both watching until we turned the corner. When Lily finally drifted to sleep, her tiny hand resting over the dinosaur, I glanced at her peaceful face and felt the weight of the night settle in my chest. It was only a dinner, only a stranger, only a broken car, only a small kindness. But small kindnesses are never just small, not when life has been hard for too long. And as I sat parked outside our building, rain still tapping gently on the windshield, I realized something had shifted inside me in a way I could not name. Maybe it was the way he looked at my daughter. Maybe it was the way he knelt in the rain without hesitation. Maybe it was simply the first moment in months when I did not feel entirely on my own. I texted him 3 words: "We are home." His reply came seconds later, simple but steady. "Good. Sleep well, both of you." I stared at the screen for a long time before finally stepping out into the soft drizzle, carrying Lily inside with the dinosaur tucked between us. A kindness I had not expected, a warmth I had not asked for, and a beginning I was not sure I was ready to admit. The next Saturday began like any other, with Lily waking me before the sun had fully risen, climbing onto my mattress with her stuffed bunny and whispering urgently that the world was awake and therefore we should be too. I dragged myself into the kitchen, made oatmeal, and tried to convince myself that the knot in my stomach was simply exhaustion and not a lingering memory of a man with rain dripping from his hair and sincerity in his voice. I kept telling myself the night at the restaurant, the broken car, the umbrella, the repaired engine. All of it was just coincidence, layered on coincidence. A kind man helping a mom struggling in a parking lot was not a sign of anything. It could not be. I had responsibilities, routines, boundaries carved from years of surviving on my own. I was determined to keep my distance, determined at least until there was a knock at my door. It was Mrs. Harlow, cheeks rosy from the morning chill, holding a picnic basket so large it looked like it belonged in a magazine. She beamed at Lily, then looked at me with the kind of smile that suggested she already knew my answer before she even asked the question. "I made sandwiches and lemonade, dear. The park is lovely today. Come join me." The invitation was innocent enough, but something about the way she clasped her hands together made me suspicious. Still, I said yes, partly because Lily squealed the moment she heard the word park, and partly because refusing Mrs. Harlow outright felt like kicking a puppy. We walked the few blocks to Maple Grove Park, the early autumn breeze tugging at Lily's small braids. The leaves were starting to turn shades of amber and gold, littering the grass like confetti. Families had already gathered on blankets, children ran freely, and dogs chased after neon-colored balls. It was the kind of scene that usually made me feel warm, safe, tucked inside something tender. But today I felt nervous, as if the world were waiting for something I did not yet see. That's when I saw him. Across the field, near a picnic blanket spread under a large oak tree, stood Ethan adjusting the strap of a cooler, while Caleb excitedly tapped the ground with a stick. The moment his eyes landed on me, something softened across his face. Not a startled reaction, but the slightest knowing smile, gentle and familiar in a way it had no right to be. I froze, turning slowly toward Mrs. Harlow. She hummed and pretended to study a squirrel as if she had not just orchestrated a social collision. "You knew he would be here." Mrs. Harlow shrugged, blissfully unbothered. "The park is for everyone, dear." She said it with such innocence that I almost laughed. Almost. Before I could retreat, Lily spotted Caleb and took off toward him, shouting his name with the same excitement she reserved for balloons and birthday cake. Within seconds, they were running in messy circles, laughter echoing through the crisp morning air. There was no stopping the moment from unfolding. And maybe deep down, I did not really want to. "Hi." Ethan's voice was polite but warm as I approached. His hands were in his pockets like he was trying not to appear too eager, though his eyes gave him away. I smiled awkwardly, brushing hair behind my ear. "I didn't know you would be here." "I figured." His smile widened just a bit. "Your neighbor is what my mother used to call a professional arranger." I laughed, and just like that, the tension eased. The man had a way of making the air around him feel calmer, steadier, as if chaos politely excused itself whenever he spoke. He gestured toward the picnic blanket. "Join us." I hesitated, thinking of all the reasons I should say no, but then I looked over at Lily. Her cheeks were flushed with joy, her hand held tightly in Caleb's, both of them throwing leaves in the air like confetti. Their world was simple, their hearts were open, and I could not be the one to shut that door. I sat down. The blanket was soft, the shade cool, and the air full of distant children's laughter. Ethan handed me a chilled bottle. "Mint tea," he said. "You wrinkled your nose at the coffee during dinner." I blinked, surprised by the detail he remembered. "You really noticed that?" He gave a small shrug, eyes on the kids. "I pay attention." It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't showmanship. It was said with the quiet patience of a man who meant exactly what he said. As Lily and Caleb drew patterns in the dirt with sticks and eventually began building a leaf castle, I found myself talking to Ethan with a kind of ease that felt foreign, almost dangerous. We talked about childhood memories, about jobs, about the strange comfort of routine. He told me about his love for architecture and how he designed spaces based on the way people breathed inside them. And I told him about the elderly woman at work who refused to drink water unless the cup had exactly 5 ice cubes in it. He laughed, the sound deep and genuine. It occurred to me then that he laughed with his whole face, not half-heartedly the way people often do to be polite. The shift I did not see coming happened quietly in the smallest moments, like when he bent down to tie Caleb's shoe and instinctively checked Lily's too, or when he looked at her scraped knee from earlier that week and said softly, "Does it still hurt?" with a tenderness that made something in my chest twist. Or when he refilled my lemonade without asking, as if noticing thirst came naturally to him. At one point, Lily tugged on my sleeve and whispered, "Mommy, can I tell you a secret?" I leaned down. She pointed at Caleb, who was now showing her how to build a leaf tower. "Can he be my brother someday?" I inhaled sharply, my heart stumbling. The innocence of the question, the hope wrapped inside it, nearly undid me. I glanced at Ethan, who was watching the kids with an expression I could not read entirely. Soft, thoughtful, maybe even a little afraid of wanting something too much. I looked back at Lily and forced my voice to stay steady. "Let's just have fun today, sweetheart." She nodded and ran back to Caleb. The sunlight shifted through the trees, warming the blanket, warming my skin, warming something inside me that had been cold for too long. I told myself it was just a picnic, just a moment, just a gentle morning in a park. But as I watched Lily braid clover flowers into Caleb's shoelaces and heard their giggles echo across the grass, I knew the truth. Something was changing, quietly, slowly, and this time I was not sure I wanted to stop it. The following Monday began with the same tired routine, the same warm oatmeal for Lily, the same hurried bus ride to the rehabilitation center where I worked the morning shift, but something inside me felt unsettled. Maybe it was the way Lily kept humming the song Caleb taught her at the picnic, or maybe it was the way my mind kept circling back to Ethan offering me mint tea with that quiet, attentive smile, or maybe it was simply the feeling of having let someone slip too close to the parts of me I usually hid. Whatever the reason, my stomach fluttered with nerves I could not name as I walked into the east wing of the center, where I was assigned to care for residents who needed more attentive support. My first stop was room 114, belonging to Mrs. Langford, a retired heiress with more jewelry than patience. She was in her 80s, sharp-eyed, sharp-tongued, and always quick to remind me that she once hosted dinner parties with senators and CEOs. This morning, she sat in her floral armchair, a silk robe draped over her thin shoulders, tapping her cane against the carpet as if I were already late. "There you are," she said the moment I entered. "I was beginning to think you had abandoned me like everyone else." I offered her a gentle smile while checking her vitals. Just running a little behind today. She narrowed her eyes. You changed your shampoo. You smell like citrus. It wasn't a compliment. As I filled her water picture, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it, focusing on adjusting her pillows, but she noticed everything. You keep glancing at that phone. What is it? A man? The way she said man made it sound like a crime. I hesitated, then shook my head. Just a friend. Brushing it off felt safest. Mrs. Langford let out a dry laugh. A friend, she repeated as if the word itself amused her. Who is he? Someone from work. I shook my head again, trying to keep my voice even. No, he is just someone I met recently. Someone kind. Someone with a child. Someone who makes my daughter smile in a way she has not in a very long time. But I did not say that. I only said he is just a single dad. Something like interest flickered across her face, sharp and quick. And what does he do? Before I could stop myself, I answered. He is an architect. He owns a firm, runs it, I think, builds important things. Big things. She hummed at that, her gaze cutting through me like glass. Men like that, she said, leaning forward as if delivering a sermon, do not marry women like you. I stilled. The water picture trembled slightly in my hand. She continued, her voice cold and certain. You confuse kindness with affection. These men live in another world. They may play nice for a moment, but they do not stay. Not for girls who work double shifts and eat dinner from plastic containers. The words hit me harder than they should have. They struck places inside me I thought I had buried years ago, places shaped by disappointment and abandonment, by the image of myself standing 7 months pregnant in the doorway of the apartment where the father of my child told me he needed a break from responsibility. I placed the water picture back on the tray and forced my face into calm neutrality. I understood Mrs. Langford. Hurt people injure others without realizing, but knowing that did not make her words hurt less. When my phone buzzed again, I slipped it out to silence it, but the screen lit up with a text from Ethan. Hope your morning is easy on you. Tell Lily Caleb says hi and that he still has her leaf crown. 3 simple sentences. Yet they warmed something that had been cold all morning. I tucked the phone away before Mrs. Langford could comment further. When I left her room, my legs felt lighter, but my chest felt heavier. Every step down the hallway echoed with the same sentence she had thrown at me. Men like him do not marry women like you. The problem was that a part of me believed her, a small, shameful part buried deep beneath the layers of independence I had built for myself. By lunchtime, I had convinced myself that distance was the responsible thing to do, not for me, but for Lily. She was young, trusting, tender. She did not need to grow attached to a world she might never truly belong to. She did not need the disappointment of watching someone walk away. I replayed the picnic in my mind, the laughter of the children, the softness in Ethan's voice, the sun filtering through the leaves, the feeling of safety that settled over us like a blanket. And then I forced myself to let it go. That evening, after Lily fell asleep clutching her stuffed bunny, I opened my laptop. My hands hovered over the keyboard for a long moment, trembling slightly. Then I began typing. Dear Ethan, thank you for the picnic. Thank you for helping me with the car. Thank you for being kind to Lily. She thinks the world of you and Caleb, but I think we live in 2 very different worlds. I need to focus on being a mother and on my work. I hope you understand. Olivia. I stared at the words for several seconds, then pressed send before I could change my mind. The moment the message left the screen, my heart tightened like a fist. I closed the laptop, stood, and went to check on Lily, who slept with her cheek squished against her pillow, small snores escaping her mouth. I brushed a curl from her forehead. She deserved something stable, something predictable, something I was not sure this new bond with Ethan could promise. When I walked back to the living room, my phone buzzed. A single message from him appeared. If you ever need anything, I am here. Nothing more, no questions, no pressure. No attempt to change my mind. Somehow that kindness made my throat ache even more. 3 days passed before Lily finally asked the question. Mommy, did Caleb stop liking me? I turned toward her from where I was folding laundry, her small voice breaking on the last word. Her lower lip trembled the way it did when she tried hard not to cry. No, baby, I whispered quickly. Of course not. Then why do we not see them anymore? Clutching a tiny pink sock in my hand, I searched for an answer that did not exist. I held her against my chest, breathing in the scent of strawberry shampoo. Sometimes grown-ups just need space. It is not your fault. She nodded into my shirt, but she did not smile. And that was the first moment I wondered if I had protected her from heartbreak, or if I had created a new one. 3 days after Lily asked whether Caleb had stopped liking her, the universe answered in a way I did not expect. It was early evening, the sky outside fading into that deep blue before full darkness settles when my phone rang with a call from the number belonging to Mrs. Harlowe's neighbor. The shaky voice on the other end told me she had slipped on the stairs outside her apartment building and was taken to St. Catherine's Hospital for observation. Before the woman even finished her sentence, I had already shoved Lily's jacket onto her tiny arms and grabbed my keys. Everything inside me rushed into motion as if instinct alone was pulling me. When we arrived at the hospital, the lobby smelled of antiseptic and humming air vents, a cold sterility that always tightened my chest. I lifted Lily onto my hip as we walked toward the reception desk, her arms wrapped around my neck with quiet worry. As I explained who we were looking for, a familiar voice behind me said Olivia. My heart stumbled. I turned and saw Ethan standing only a few feet away, Caleb holding tightly to his hand. Ethan still wore his work clothes, a crisp dress shirt, slightly wrinkled, sleeves rolled to his forearms, tie tucked into his pocket, the look of a man who had rushed out the moment he heard. His hair was wind-tousled, as if he had run part of the way. Our eyes met and something warm and painful collided in my chest. "You are here," I said softly, unable to hide my surprise. "Of course," he replied, stepping closer. "She is family to us." Caleb nodded solemnly at Lily, and she reached for his hand without hesitation, their fingers intertwining naturally. That simple gesture done without thought made my throat tighten. A nurse directed us toward room 204. The hallway felt too bright, the floors too polished, the air too quiet except for the distant beeping of machines. When we stepped inside, the sight of Mrs. Harlowe lying in the bed stole the breath from my lungs. Her left arm was in a sling, a faint bruise coloring her cheek, but she looked smaller, somehow fragile in a way I had never seen. I moved to her side immediately. "Mrs. Harlowe, it is me." Her eyelids fluttered open and relief washed over her features. "Oh, good," she murmured, voice raspy. "I hoped someone would come fuss over me." I let out a laugh that broke at the end. "Of course I came." Ethan walked over next his presence grounding. He gently adjusted the blanket at the foot of her bed, then checked the water glass on her tray as if he had done it 1,000 times. Caleb set a tiny bouquet of wildflowers on the bedside table. "We picked them," he said shyly. Lily stood on her tiptoes to pat Mrs. Harlowe's uninjured hand. "You scared us." A weak chuckle escaped the older woman. "Do not worry, child. Takes more than a tumble to take me out." For the next hour, we stayed in the room doing everything that came to mind without discussing it. I straightened the pillows. Ethan spoke with the nurse to confirm the tests they were running. Caleb and Lily colored on the back of a hospital form. It felt strangely natural, the four of us falling into a rhythm that felt almost practiced, like we had done this before, like we had been doing this for years. Eventually, a nurse returned and told us they needed to take Mrs. Harlowe for imaging. As they wheeled her out, she caught my hand. "Stop overthinking everything," she whispered. "Life is shorter than you think." She glanced at Ethan, then back at me, her eyes too wise for how tired she looked. "Especially when the right people show up." I wanted to respond, but they were already rolling her down the hallway. When the room emptied, silence grew between me and Ethan, thick but not heavy, more like a truth waiting to be spoken. We stepped out into the hallway and sat on the plastic chairs lining the wall. Caleb and Lily plopped themselves on the floor in front of us, building a small castle out of cup lids and napkins. Ethan watched them for a moment, then rested his elbows on his knees, fingers laced together. "You did not have to come," he said quietly. I stared at the floor. How could I not? She has been there for us more times than I can count. He nodded slowly, then turned to me. "You did not have to distance yourself either." The words stung in a different way because they were not said with accusation, only quiet honesty. I swallowed hard. I was trying to protect Lily. and maybe myself. "I know," he said, "but you do not have to push me away to do that." He shifted slightly, his voice dropping lower, softer. "I do not see you the way she said." My chest tightened painfully. I did not want to ask, but somehow the question formed anyway. "Then how do you see me?" Ethan looked at me the way someone looks at something fragile but important, something they do not want to lose. "I see someone strong, someone who shows up, someone who deserves good things, even if she has been convinced she does not." The words hit me so hard I had to look away. For a moment, it felt like all the fears I had kept locked away were being gently pulled apart. My eyes burned as I blinked back tears. The next second surprised me. Ethan reached over and placed his hand lightly on top of mine, not gripping, not urging, just resting. A simple touch that carried more comfort than I could explain. "You do not have to carry everything alone, Olivia," he said. His voice was steady, careful, intimate, without stepping over a single boundary, and without thinking, my fingers curled around his. My breath shook. I did not know I needed someone to say that. He nodded. "Most people do not." We sat there until the nurse returned, telling us that Mrs. Harlow would be kept overnight for observation but would be fine. Relief washed over us so strongly that I had to exhale slowly to keep tears from slipping out. We gathered the children. As we headed to the exit, Lily slipped her hand into mine. Caleb reached for Ethan's. The four of us walked in pairs, but somehow it felt like we moved as one. When we stepped out into the cool night air, I finally admitted to myself what I had been avoiding for weeks. I missed him. More than I wanted to. More than I expected to. More than made any sense at all. And for the first time, I wondered whether protecting Lily also meant protecting something that might be good for both of us. The following Wednesday began quietly, almost eerily, so the kind of morning where the world feels slightly out of place without anything being obviously wrong. Lily sat at the table eating cereal shaped like tiny stars and humming the same tune she and Caleb had made up during the picnic. Every time she hummed the high note, her voice cracked a little and she giggled to herself, completely unaware that my heart warmed each time I heard that sound. I had just tied my hair back when my phone buzzed on the counter. Ethan's name lit the screen and my pulse stumbled in that familiar, confusing way it had begun doing lately. Reading his text made my stomach twist. "Caleb's running a fever. High 1. I am staying home with him. I hope it is nothing serious." The message was calm, the kind of calm parents force into their words when they are afraid to acknowledge how scared they actually are. Before I knew it, I was already reaching for Lily's jacket. "Lily, grab your bear. We are going to see Caleb." Her head shot up, eyes widening in concern. "Caleb is sick, really sick." "I do not know how sick," I said gently, "but sick enough that we are taking him some soup." "And your bear." She nodded with the seriousness of a tiny soldier preparing for duty. By the time the soup finished warming on the stove, she was ready at the door, clutching her stuffed bear like it was a mission-critical artifact. The drive to Ethan's house felt longer than usual, my fingers gripping the wheel a little tighter every time Lily whispered, "Do you think he is okay?" "I hope so, sweetheart. He is strong." When we pulled up, Ethan opened the front door before I even stepped onto the porch. His face was pale, tired hair, a little messier than usual. Sleeves pushed up like he had run his hands through his hair too many times. He looked like a man who had been listening to the sound of his child's breathing for hours, waiting for it to become steadier. "Thank you for coming," he said immediately, voice low, fragile around the edges. Lily rushed past him, holding out her bear. "This is Mr. Barry. He helps me when I am sick. Caleb can borrow him." Ethan swallowed hard, a subtle emotional tremor crossing his features. "Thank you, Lily," he whispered. She beamed and hurried inside. I stepped closer, my voice soft. "How high is the fever? 102 earlier. It dipped a little, but he is not himself. He keeps falling asleep mid-sentence." His shoulders sagged as if exhaustion and worry had wrapped themselves around him. "Let me help," I said. He did not argue. Instead, he stepped aside, a silent act of trust. Inside the house was dim and unusually quiet. No cartoons, no clatter of toys, just a stillness that made every sound feel heavier. Caleb lay curled on the couch under a thick blanket, cheeks flushed, pink eyelids fluttering. Lily placed her bear beside him, tucking it under his arm like she was giving him a secret weapon. "Hey, buddy," I whispered, kneeling beside the couch. "We brought you something." He opened his eyes slowly, the way children do when they are fighting sleep and fear at the same time. "Olivia," he murmured. His voice was small cracked, threading itself directly into my chest. "Let us try a little soup," I said. He nodded weakly. I lifted the spoon and gently blew on it, the steam rising in soft curls. He took a sip, then another. After a few more, his body relaxed. His breathing eased. The room felt a little less tight. As he drifted back into sleep, I brushed a curl away from his forehead. His skin was warm, but not frighteningly so now. Ethan stood across the room, watching with a stillness I had not seen before. Something tender breaking through his worry. "She has not left his side since this morning," he said quietly. The way his voice softened made my chest tighten again. Before I could answer, Caleb stirred. His small hand reached out blindly. I caught it instinctively. His fingers curled around mine with surprising strength. His voice came out in a fever-heavy whisper. "Mommy, stay. Do not go." My entire body froze. The world went silent. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum in an empty room. I felt Ethan go still behind me. I did not dare look at him. Caleb's eyes barely opened, just enough for me to see the fear shimmering in them. He was not confusing me with someone else. He was reaching for comfort, for safety, for a shape of love he was too young to understand fully, but wise enough to seek. "Sweetheart," I whispered, leaning closer, my voice breaking. "I am right here. I am not going anywhere." He relaxed instantly, his small hand still gripping mine. Slowly, his breathing steadied again, and he slipped back into sleep. Lily climbed onto the couch beside him, placing her head near his shoulder as if sharing the job of protecting him. Watching them, something inside me dissolved. Something old and fearful. Something guarded. "They look right together," Ethan said quietly behind me. Not in a romantic way. In a family way. His voice trembled just enough to reveal how vulnerable the words were. I finally turned to look at him. His expression was raw, unguarded, filled with a tenderness that felt almost too big for the room. "This," he said, gesturing softly toward the children, "feels like something I did not think I would ever have again." I swallowed, my voice barely a whisper. I know the feeling. We stood there for a long moment, breathing the same quiet air, letting the weight of unspoken truths rest gently between us. When the children finally fell into deeper sleep, I rose from the couch. Ethan moved closer, stopping just inches from me. His voice dropped to a murmur meant only for me. "Thank you for being here. For them. For me." My eyes stung my chest, tightening with a mix of fear and something dangerously close to hope. "I am glad I came," I admitted. The truth hung between us like warm light. We did not move. We did not speak. We simply existed in the kind of silence that feels like a turning point. The morning after Caleb's fever broke, sunlight spilled across my kitchen table in long, soft stripes, warming the wood beneath my fingertips as I poured Lily's cereal. She hummed happily while swinging her legs under the chair, completely unaware of the restless thoughts swirling through my mind. I should have felt relieved after yesterday. Caleb was finally better. Ethan looked less weighed down. The kids fell asleep side by side, safe and peaceful. Everything should have felt calm, hopeful even, but instead, a knot tightened in my chest with every memory of Ethan's voice the night before, that quiet honesty when he said this. Feels like something I did not think I would ever have again. I heard those words in my head now and again, followed by the faint echo of Caleb whispering, "Mommy, stay. Do not go." And beneath all of it, like a cold undercurrent, lingered the voice from my past that had shaped so much of who I became. The father of my child walking out the door when I was 7 months pregnant, telling me I was too much, too emotional, too demanding, too inconvenient. I had spent years rebuilding my life after that brick by brick, every choice careful, every connection monitored, every risk weighed. And slowly I had convinced myself that love for someone like me was a luxury I could not afford. I was a mother first. Everything else was secondary. But yesterday, as I watched Caleb cling to my hand in his fever haze, and watched Lily rest her head beside his, something inside me shifted, something terrifying and gentle at the same time. Lily looked up suddenly, bits of cereal sticking to her chin. "Mommy," she asked quietly, "can we stay with them forever?" My spoon froze halfway to the bowl. Her question hit something deep, something tender and afraid. Forever was a word I had trained myself not to believe in. Forever was too fragile, too risky, too uncertain. I set my spoon down and walked around the table, lifting Lily onto my lap. "Sweetheart," I whispered, brushing a strand of hair from her cheek. "Why do you want to stay with them forever?" Lily rested her head against my shoulder. "Because Caleb is my best friend, and Mr. Ethan makes you smile, and their house feels warm. Warm. Not big, not fancy, not impressive. Warm." I swallowed, holding her tighter. She deserved warmth. That was the truth I could not ignore. After dropping her off at preschool, I spent my work shift stuck in a restless haze. I moved through tasks like a sleepwalker, folding blankets, delivering medication cups, answering questions from patients while my mind wandered. Every quiet moment filled with the image of Ethan standing beside me at the hospital, the softness in his eyes, the ease in his voice, the way he said, "You do not have to carry everything alone." No one had spoken to me like that in years, or maybe ever. When my shift ended, I felt an urge to clear my head and walked to the little thrift store near the bus stop. The bell above the door jingled as I entered, the familiar smell of old books and laundry detergent wafting through the aisles. I browsed without intention until a pair of tiny shoes caught my eye. Pink, worn, almost the exact shade Lily loved, but the stitching frayed and the soles thinning. They reminded me of Lily's favorite pair, the ones she had been wearing almost every day until the strap tore last week. I sighed, touching the little bow at the toe. I had meant to fix hers, but had not found the time between work and life and the emotional storm of the past few days. I walked home slowly afterward, my thoughts restless. When I opened the door to our apartment, a small brown bag sat on the doormat. My name was written on it in Ethan's handwriting. My heart leapt against my ribs, a flutter of fear and something dangerously close to hope. Inside the bag lay a pair of tiny pink shoes, Lily's shoes, cleaned, re-stitched, repainted in gentle strokes that matched the original shade perfectly. The worn soles had been replaced, the straps secured, the faded bows brightened. Attached was a small note. "Every step matters." Lily gasped when she saw them, eyes glowing. "Mommy, they are new again." She slipped them on, giggling when they squeaked softly. I recognized that squeak. The exact third step squeak they had before the strap broke the one she used to call her happy noise. My hands shook as I held the shoes, feeling the careful craftsmanship. This was not a quick fix. Someone had taken real time, real care. That someone was Ethan, a man who ran a company, a man who could have bought a new pair in 5 minutes, a man who instead chose to repair something because it mattered to Lily, and because it mattered to me. My breath hitched, tears stinging the back of my eyes. Lily danced in a circle, the squeak, squeak, squeak echoing like tiny declarations of joy across the living room. "Mommy," she chirped, "does this mean we can stay with them forever now?" The knot in my chest finally loosened. Maybe for the first time in years, I realized that fear was not a warning. It was a sign that something mattered enough to be scared of losing. That evening, when Lily went to bed, I sat on the couch holding the repaired shoes, running my thumb along the brightened bows. I had spent so long protecting us from heartbreak that I had not considered the possibility that love might not break us. It might mend us, slowly, gently, quietly, like the hands that had repaired these little shoes. The next time my phone buzzed, my heart did not panic like it used to. It settled. Ethan's name appeared on the screen, along with a simple message: "Hope the shoes fit. If you need anything, truly anything, we are here. We, not I. We, as though he already saw us as a unit, a shape of a family, a beginning. Fear tightened in my chest, but for once I let it. Fear always comes before courage, and maybe this time I was ready for courage. The winter storm came in faster than anyone expected, rolling over the town like a gray wall that swallowed the last traces of daylight. By 5 in the evening, the roads glistened with thin sheets of ice, and the power in our building flickered twice before shutting off entirely. The apartment dimmed to shadow, leaving only the faint glow from the streetlights outside. Lily clung to me the moment the heater went silent, whispering that she was scared, her small fingers gripping my sweater with a trembling urgency that pierced straight through me. I wrapped her in her thickest blanket and held her close, heart racing as the cold began to creep into the room. I was reaching for my phone when it buzzed in my hand. It was Ethan. "Are you two okay? Power is out here. Roads are freezing over. Do you need a warm place for the night?" I hesitated for a moment, but the temperature in the room was dropping fast, and Lily's shivers grew stronger. Another message came through before I could reply. "Do not worry about the roads. I am close. I can come get you." 5 minutes later, a knock echoed through the hallway, and when I opened the door, cold air rushed in, along with the sight of Ethan standing there with a flashlight in one hand and a heavy winter coat draped over his arm. His hair was damp from snow, cheeks flushed from the wind. Without saying a word, he placed the coat over my shoulders and then scooped Lily into his arms as though she weighed nothing. She rested her head on his chest, trusting him instantly. The drive to his house was slow and cautious, the storm painting the windshield in streaks of white. But inside the car, with the faint hum of the engine and Lily sleeping softly, there was a quiet warmth I had not felt in years. When we arrived, the house glowed with soft candlelight. A small generator hummed in the background, powering only the essentials, giving the entire space a golden, comforting glow that made the cold outside feel like a different world. He led us into the living room where a crackling fire slowly warmed the air. Caleb sat wrapped in a blanket, eyes lighting up the moment he saw Lily. She ran straight to him, and the two children curled together on the couch like they had done it 1,000 times. Watching them felt like watching a memory being created right in front of me, something tender and real and impossible to ignore. Ethan disappeared into the kitchen and returned with 2 steaming bowls of soup, setting one in front of me with a warm, familiar smile. "You two must be freezing. Let me get you something to change into." He came back with a soft, oversized sweater and a pair of fleece pants that belonged to his late wife. I hesitated for a second, fingers brushing the fabric gently, reverently. "Are you sure?" He nodded with quiet certainty. She would have wanted them used, not stored away. Something in me softened at that. I changed in the guest bathroom, letting the warmth of the sweater soak into my skin. When I stepped back out, Ethan was sitting on the floor near the fireplace tending to the flames, while the kids whispered silly stories to each other. The scene looked like something I had no right to be part of, a world I had been standing on the edge of for weeks, without realizing how badly I wanted to step inside. After the kids fell asleep under a single large blanket, I sat with Ethan on the couch, both of us angled toward the fire. The storm outside intensified the wind howling against the windows, but inside the room there was only quiet, soft breathing and shadows dancing across the walls. For a long time, we said nothing. Then he spoke, voice low, steady. "I never realized how quiet my nights were until you two walked into them." I tucked my feet under the blanket, pulling it around my legs. "I do not want to complicate your life, Ethan." He turned to me, eyes full of something raw and unfiltered. "You do not complicate anything. You make things feel real." My breath caught. He shifted slightly closer, but not too close. After my wife passed, nights felt endless. I did everything I could to give Caleb what he needed, but it always felt like something vital was missing. Until you and Lily. He exhaled slowly, like releasing a truth he had held too long. "You make this house feel like a home again." My throat tightened. I stared at the fire for a moment, the flames flickering gold and amber. I wanted to believe him. I wanted to step forward to let go of the fear that had guided my every choice since the day Lily's father left me standing alone in a doorway with a swollen belly and a shattered heart. But fear is a stubborn thing. I folded my hands in my lap, speaking barely above a whisper. I was left Ethan, while 7 months pregnant. No warning, no goodbye. Just gone. His jaw, clenched eyes darkening with a quiet storm of pain and anger on my behalf. You did not deserve that. No one does. I nodded, my voice cracking. I learned to do everything alone. To never expect anything from anyone. To never rely on anyone. He shifted even closer, his voice almost a murmur now. What if you do not have to be alone anymore? The question hung in the air, warm and terrifying. I looked at him, then really looked. The exhaustion in his eyes from nights caring for Caleb, the gentleness he carried without flaunting it, the patience with which he moved through the world, the kindness that repaired tiny shoes, the steadiness that made Lily feel safe. Slowly, I leaned my head against his shoulder. He let out a breath that sounded like relief and wrapped an arm lightly around me, not pulling me close but anchoring me. The fire crackled softly. The kids slept peacefully. The storm outside raged, while inside the world felt still. After a long, quiet moment, he whispered the words that finally broke something open inside me. You do not have to carry everything alone anymore. I closed my eyes, letting the truth of that settle in my bones, letting it warm the coldest parts of me. And as I rested against him, I realized that for the first time in a very long time, I felt safe enough to believe it. The storm softened by morning, leaving only a thin shimmer of frost across Ethan's windows, but even as the world outside thawed, something inside me remained warmed in a way I had not felt for years. I woke on the couch with Lily's head resting on my arm and the weight of a thick blanket draped over both of us. For a moment, I did not move. I only listened. The soft hum of the generator, the gentle crackle of cooling embers in the fireplace, the quiet breathing of 2 children curled together across from us, and somewhere in the kitchen the faint clatter of dishes that told me Ethan was already awake. I eased myself up, tucking the blanket back over Lily before standing. The sweater he had given me the night before still held traces of warmth, a comfort that lingered against my skin. I padded quietly toward the kitchen and paused in the doorway. Ethan stood at the counter, hair still tousled from sleep sleeves, pushed up flipping pancakes with a precision that made me smile despite myself. He noticed me right away. "Morning," he said softly, like he did not want to disturb the peace in the room. "Morning," I whispered back. I leaned against the doorframe. "You are making pancakes." He shrugged lightly. "Survival breakfast? Caleb refuses anything else after a storm." I smiled, a small flutter rising in my chest. He hesitated before adding, "I made chocolate chip ones for Lily." My breath caught for a second. The way he remembered little details. The way he kept showing up in small, gentle ways. I offered to help, but he shook his head. "Sit. Rest. You did enough last night." I sat at the kitchen island, watching him move with an ease that felt too natural for someone who had lived years carrying grief. The light from the window brushed across his features, softening the shadows beneath his eyes. For the first time, I wondered how many mornings he had spent like this. Alone with a pan, a half-empty bottle of syrup, and a quiet house that must have felt too big without laughter in it. Lily and Caleb eventually wandered in, rubbing sleep from their eyes. Lily climbed onto a chair beside me, while Caleb shuffled straight to his father, pressing his cheek into Ethan's side in a silent good-morning hug. Ethan smoothed a hand over his hair before placing a warm pancake onto his plate. Breakfast felt strangely like something that belonged to us, the kind of morning you see in commercials but never imagine you might touch. Lily told a story about a squirrel she once saw wearing a leaf as a hat. Caleb insisted squirrels did not wear hats. Ethan pretended to take notes like it was a scientific debate, and I sat in the middle of it all, letting warmth seep deep into my bones. After breakfast, the sun brightened enough to melt the ice from the roads. Ethan offered to drive us home, but before I could answer, Lily tugged at my hand. "Mommy, can we stay a little longer?" "Just a little." Caleb grabbed her other hand eagerly. "Please." Ethan met my eyes and something unspoken passed between us. No pressure, no expectation. Just an open door. We stayed. The morning unfolded lazily. The kids built a fort out of couch cushions. Lily declared herself queen. Caleb declared himself dragon. Ethan declared himself the castle inspector and asked for building permits. Their laughter filled every corner of the house, settling into the walls like it belonged there. After lunch, Ethan suggested we decorate for Christmas. His voice carried a shy note as though he worried it might be too forward. But Lily gasped with joy at the idea, which meant there was no turning back. We pulled out boxes from the hall closet, their surfaces dusty from a year of untouched memories. When Ethan opened the largest box, the first ornament on top was a small glass heart. His breath caught, and I reached out instinctively to touch his arm. "She loved Christmas," he said quietly. I could hear the ache beneath the words. I covered his hand with mine. "Take your time." He nodded once, collecting himself. Then we decorated together. Lights tangled, ribbons everywhere. The tree leaned at one point. Ethan and I had to hold it upright while the kids argued over whether the star should be tilted or straight. Lily carefully hung her handmade ornament painted in swirls of pink. Caleb placed his beside hers. When he stepped back and looked up at me, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Does this look like a family tree now?" The room went still. My breath caught, and from across the branches I saw Ethan's expression soften with something deep and full. I crouched to Caleb's level and brushed a curl from his forehead. "Yes, sweetheart, it does." His smile bloomed slow and shy. Later, as dusk folded into the house and the kids dozed against the couch, Ethan walked over with a small envelope in hand. "I found this in the ornament box," he said. "I think it was meant for Caleb but never opened." He hesitated before offering it to me. "Maybe you should read it." I opened it carefully. Inside was a photo. A picture taken years ago. Ethan, his late wife. A younger Caleb between them holding a gingerbread cookie almost as big as his face. On the back was a handwritten note. "Christmas is home. Wherever you are, that is where home will be." Ethan exhaled shakily as I read it. I think she would have liked you and Lily." My chest tightened with something bittersweet and strangely comforting. I reached out and touched his cheek gently. "You have built a beautiful home, Ethan." He shook his head softly. "We are building it." That night, after the kids finally fell asleep, tangled together in a blanket, I stood by the Christmas tree watching the lights flicker. Ethan joined me quietly, standing close enough that our shoulders brushed. He spoke so softly it felt like words meant only for the space between us. "When you are here, Olivia, this house does not feel like just mine anymore." I turned to him. My voice trembled. "And when I am here, it does not feel like I am visiting." His breath hitched almost imperceptibly. "Olivia," he did not finish the sentence. He did not have to. The truth hung in the air with the pine scent and soft lights. We both felt it. Something had shifted, something irreversible, something real. The first thing I noticed when we stepped into Ethan's home that evening was the warmth. Not the kind that came from the fireplace or the soft glow of holiday lights, but the kind that settles somewhere deeper. The kind that makes your shoulders drop and your breath ease without asking permission. Snow drifted lazily outside the windows while soft instrumental music played from the kitchen. It felt like stepping into a moment suspended outside of time, a moment that did not need to impress anyone because it already belonged to the people in it. Mrs. Harlow sat on the sofa with a blanket draped over her knees, smiling as if she had been waiting her entire life to witness whatever was about to unfold. Lily and Caleb ran laps around the living room laughing in those breathless, delighted bursts that always made my heart swell, and Ethan, standing beside the dining table adjusting the final plate, looked up at me with a smile that felt like a quiet welcome home. Dinner was simple: baked chicken pasta, roasted veggies, warm bread from a local bakery. Nothing fancy. No polished silver or towering centerpieces. Just plates set with care, and everyone gathered close. I sat beside Lily and across from Ethan. Beside him sat Caleb, who kept reaching for Lily's hand under the table, thinking no one noticed. I noticed. I noticed everything. After dinner, we pushed the table aside so the kids could build a pretend snow fort out of couch cushions. Their laughter filled the room in a way that made something inside me ache with the realization that I had not heard this much joy in years. I stood near the fireplace watching them when Ethan walked over holding 2 mugs of hot chocolate. "One for you," he said softly. I took the mug, wrapping my hands around its warmth. "Thank you." Our eyes met and held for a moment longer than needed, and then he cleared his throat lightly as if steadying himself. "There is something I would like to do before the night ends." His voice was quiet but firm, a gentle certainty. I did not know what to expect. A conversation, maybe. A moment of honesty. But not this. Not the way he stepped away from me into the center of the living room. Not the way he called softly for the kids to come closer. Not the way my heart began to pound as if it already knew something my mind had not caught up to yet. Lily and Caleb ran to him, breathless cheeks flushed pink from excitement. He knelt down to their height, placing a hand gently on each of their shoulders. The room fell into a hush so complete I could hear the faint pop of a log in the fireplace. I held my breath. He looked at the 2 children first, his voice warm, steady, almost reverent. "You two have brought so much joy into this house, more than it has seen in a long time." Caleb leaned into him, smiling with unfiltered affection. Lily reached out, placing her tiny hand over his, and then Ethan lifted his gaze to me. And everything in the room shifted. He did not stand. He did not move closer. He simply turned his full attention on me while still kneeling beside the children. The position said everything before he even opened his mouth. My throat tightened. He spoke softly, but every word seemed to echo. "Olivia, I do not have the right words for what these months have meant to me. I do not think I ever will. But I know this. The day you walked into that restaurant, the day Lily tugged you to that table, something in my life changed." His voice wavered just slightly, but he steadied it. "I saw someone brave, someone kind, someone who never stops giving even when she has every reason to quit. And I saw a little girl who reminded my son how to laugh again." I covered my mouth as emotion surged up my throat. Ethan reached into his pocket, but it was not a ring he pulled out. It was a small, folded drawing, the one Caleb and Lily had made together weeks ago, the 4 stick figures holding hands under a crooked sun. He set it gently on the rug in front of him. "I do not want to take anything from you, Olivia," he said quietly. "I do not want to replace anything or overshadow anything. I only want to build something with you. Something steady, something honest, something that feels like home on the days when everything else feels like too much." My knees weakened. My heartbeat was everywhere. And then he said the words that broke me open in the gentlest way possible. "If you will have me, I want to come home to the 3 of you every day. Not just you, not just me, all of us." The room melted into silence. Lily stared at me wide-eyed as though holding her breath. Caleb reached for Ethan's hand, clutching it tightly. Mrs. Harlow wiped her eyes proudly as if she had orchestrated this moment herself, and maybe she had in her own way. My hands trembled as I stepped closer. One step, another. Ethan remained on his knees with the children beside him, his eyes steady and vulnerable in a way that made the whole world feel tender. I crouched down in front of them, my voice a whisper, carrying every ounce of truth I had left inside me. "Yes." His breath escaped in a shaky exhale, as if he had been holding it for months. Lily flew forward, wrapping her arms around both of us at once, squealing in a burst of pure joy. Caleb joined a heartbeat later, his small arms circling my shoulders. Ethan pulled us all close, his forehead resting against mine in a moment so quiet, so fragile. It felt like a prayer. Behind us, Mrs. Harlow clapped once softly, murmuring about time. But I barely heard her, because right then in the circle of our 4 intertwined lives, I realized something I had never known I could feel again. I was not saying yes to a proposal. I was saying yes to a life. Yes to a family. Yes to a home I never expected to find. The morning of our wedding came quietly, as if the world itself understood that this day did not need fanfare or noise to matter. It was early spring, the kind where the air still carried a cool edge, but the sunlight softened it just enough to feel like hope brushing the skin. I stood in front of a small mirror propped on a wooden bench at the park's garden patio, smoothing the simple ivory dress that flowed softly around my ankles. No lace, No diamonds, no designer label, just a dress that felt like me. Behind me, Lily hummed while twirling in her pink satin dress, her flower crown tilted slightly to one side. Owen tried his best to walk carefully with the ring box, practicing again and again, because he did not want to drop it like he had during practice yesterday. Ethan was somewhere near the entrance, talking quietly with the officiant, and for the first time in years, my heartbeat felt steady, not from absence of fear, but from the presence of peace. The ceremony was small. A handful of friends, a few co-workers. Mrs. Harlow, in a wheelchair, insisted on wearing a large sun hat with a pink ribbon because it matched Lily. Rows of wooden chairs lined the garden aisle, but most people stood rather than sit, as if drawn by the simple tenderness of the moment. When I stepped out with Lily holding my hand and Owen walking slowly ahead of us, I saw Ethan waiting at the end of the aisle wearing a modest gray suit that somehow made him look warmer, kinder, more like the man I had grown to love, slowly, quietly, piece by piece. His eyes found mine, instantly softening, as if every thought he had been carrying dissolved the moment he saw me. The officiant began, but the words felt less like ceremony and more like gentle background music, something to anchor the moment rather than define it. We did not prepare vows. Neither of us wanted rehearsed promises. We wanted real ones. When it was time, Ethan took my hands in his. His voice was low, steady, carrying something deeper than the words themselves. Olivia, I do not promise perfection. I cannot. But I promise presence. I promise to stand with you even when the days feel heavy. I promise to laugh with you in the small moments and hold on to you in the hard ones. I promise to love Lily like she is part of my soul, and I promise to keep making a home where all four of us can breathe. Tears blurred my vision, but I held his gaze because there was nowhere else I wanted to look. My vow came out softer than I expected, but stronger, too, in its own way. Ethan, I cannot offer perfection either, but I can offer truth. I can offer kindness. I can offer every ounce of strength I have learned from every storm I survived. I promise to love Caleb as my own and to walk beside you as we build the kind of life we once thought we had lost. I promise a home made of quiet mornings, patient evenings, and second chances. And I promise to choose you, to choose us, every day. When the officiant announced us husband and wife, there was no grand applause. Just Lily cheering at the top of her lungs and Caleb lifting the ring box triumphantly as if he had just conquered the world. Ethan kissed me gently, tenderly, with a reverence that felt less like fireworks and more like sunrise. Later, during the small reception under the blossoming trees, Lily tugged on my dress and whispered, "Mommy, does this mean we are really a family forever?" I knelt down, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and nodded. "Yes, sweetheart. Forever." She hugged me so tightly that I almost lost my balance. Across the garden, Caleb ran to Ethan waving a half-eaten cookie, shouting something about building a family fort in the living room tonight. I watched them both. The man I married and the little boy who reached for me in a dreamlike fever months ago, and it felt like watching two pieces of life I never believed I would have again come together. The next months unfolded slowly in the kind of rhythm you never notice until you look back and realize how much has changed. Morning routines that once felt chaotic became almost peaceful. Ethan would pack the lunches while I braided Lily's hair. Caleb would sneak extra crackers into his backpack, thinking no one noticed. Evenings became our soft landing place. We cooked dinner together, sometimes pasta, sometimes grilled cheese, sometimes cereal, because life happens and no one minded. The kids colored on the kitchen floor, while Ethan and I washed dishes side by side. Occasionally, our hands would brush and we would exchange a look that spoke more honestly than words. Weekends turned into small adventures. Trips to the farmer's market, walks through the park, movie nights where the kids always fell asleep halfway through, leaving Ethan and me whispering under blankets about everything and nothing. And slowly, the house itself changed. Not through renovation or expensive furniture, but through details. Lily's drawings taped proudly on the fridge. Caleb's dinosaur toys scattered under tables. A chipped mug I loved sitting next to Ethan's meticulously organized cup collection. A pair of tiny repaired shoes sitting by the front door, reminding me of a man who once quietly stitched together more than leather. He stitched hope back into my life. One quiet night in midsummer, we spread a checkered blanket in our backyard after dinner because the kids insisted they wanted to watch the clouds drift as the sky darkened. Lily lay across my stomach while Caleb curled under Ethan's arm. Fireflies blinked across the yard like tiny floating stars. The world felt impossibly gentle. I looked over at Ethan. His face was relaxed, his eyes soft in the fading light. This life, it was not perfect. It was not glamorous. It did not come wrapped in fairy tale ribbons, but it was ours, built slowly, quietly, beautifully. I ran my fingers through Lily's hair and whispered words that felt truer than my own heartbeat. All of this because one little girl tugged my hand and said, "Mom, let us go." Ethan turned toward me, threading his fingers through mine. "And because you said yes," he whispered. And just like that, beneath a soft sky with the laughter of two children blending into the hum of early summer, I knew with absolute certainty that every choice, every hardship, every moment of doubt had led me exactly where I was meant to be, home. If this story touched something deep inside you, if you felt your chest tighten when Lily whispered, "Mom, let us go," or when Caleb reached for a mother who was not his, yet loved her like she already was, then maybe you are here for a reason. Maybe you needed a reminder that no matter how heavy life gets, no matter how many storms try to break you, love still finds a way back into the quiet corners of our lives. Stories like Olivia and Ethan's do not happen with grand fireworks or dramatic rescues. They happen in soft moments, in tiny kindnesses, in the way a man fixes a pair of worn children's shoes because he sees the worth in every step a little girl takes. They happen when someone shows up not with perfection, but with presence. When someone kneels not to impress, but to join a family that has already been stitched together by shared wounds, small joys, and second chances. And maybe that is why you are still here watching until the very last second. Because somewhere inside you know what it feels like to hold on through the dark nights. You know what it feels like to be alone at a diner table wondering if life forgot you, and what it feels like to hope again even when hope scares you. You know what it is like to love someone so much your heart aches and to fear losing them before the story even begins. And if you saw yourself in Olivia's strength, or in Ethan's gentle devotion, or in the innocence of two children finding comfort in each other's laughter, then this story was for you. Not because it is perfect, but because it is real in the way real life is. Messy, tender, fragile, beautiful. Here at Soul Stirring Stories, we tell these stories for people like you. People who believe love can heal. People who believe family is not just blood, but choosing each other again and again. People who understand that the quietest moments often speak the loudest. If this journey warmed your heart or reminded you that there are still good men in the world, still good women fighting to protect their children, still tiny hands capable of bringing two broken people together, then take a moment right now to like this video. Not for the algorithm, but because it tells YouTube that these kinds of stories matter, that people still crave kindness in a world that moves too fast. And if you want more stories that hold your heart gently, that give you hope on the days you feel forgotten, that remind you, no one is ever too late for a second chance, then please subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We release new stories every week, each one crafted with the same care, the same emotion, the same belief that love does not need to be loud to be life-changing. You can also share in the comments which moment struck you hardest. Was it when Ethan stood in the rain fixing Olivia's car with shaking hands? When Caleb whispered, "Mommy, stay in his fevered dream"? When Lily drew their family of 4 with a shaky crayon but the truest heart? Or was it when Ethan finally knelt, not just for a woman, but for the entire family he hoped to create? Your words help others heal. Your story may be the one someone else needs to read today. And before you go, remember this. Happiness does not always arrive with glitter and grand gestures. Sometimes it appears in the smallest moments, in pancakes on a winter morning, in repaired shoes left by the door, in children laughing under a blanket fort, in a hand reaching for yours when you thought no one saw you trying so hard to stand. Let this story remind you you deserve a love that stays, a love that listens, a love that chooses you in the quiet and in the chaos. Thank you for watching, for feeling, for being here. Until next time, stay kind, stay brave, and keep believing in the quiet power of choosing each other every day. Soul-stirring stories, where every heart has a home.